Howdy.
Hi, Jonathan. Welcome to the Q&A session. My name is Adrian. I'll be the host of the Q&A session. We're going to have people joining the stream. The way that we're going to proceed is we're inviting everyone in the audience to type their questions in the chat.
Okay.
We'll repeat that a few times, just so that whenever more people are joining, they're aware of it. But in the meantime, I'm going to start with some of the questions related to the presentation. It was very, very technical, a lot of interesting challenges. You were very focused on the very extreme deadline that you had for the challenge. And how do you think this strict deadlines, because if we all work in software and we know that deadlines are a huge pressure point. How do you think these tight deadlines influence the way that products get to be built?
It's a great question, and I move at an unbelievably fast pace. But here's the thing, and I'll say this. I've said it in a couple other places. When you get called for a digital transformation job, it's too late. It's already too late in the day, right? I talked about the Fortune website was 5 years old. And 5 years before that, I was at the Telegraph, where I had a 10-year-old website, 3 mobile applications, 4 APIs, a paywall, and an identity system. And we had to move fast to catch up to the market, not even to go to the future, but to get to the present. And I think that can be really tough on sort of developers. People who have to sort of work sort of day in, day out. And I think the real secret there is making sure that people know what matters and what doesn't. Because what I worry about, and I see this now with some of my teams, is that the developers are more concerned about the deadlines than I am. And I'm a lean guy and sort of an agilist at heart. And what my job is to do is to play with time, budget, and scope. And so if I can create an MVP, I'll de-scope things, right? I need the development team not to worry about everything being perfect, but being good enough to pay for, and then working with my stakeholders to not demand perfection. And that's really what everything is where, I'm sitting in the middle trying to keep my developers calm while creating great work. And then working with my stakeholders to go, do you really need that? We can't launch if there's not a giant letter at the beginning of a paragraph. Like drop caps will be the end of my life. I promise you, right? Seriously, this was a thing. You have a drop cap, which is just a big letter at the front of a paragraph. That has zero business value, like none, right? This is not the Middle Ages. We're not like creating scrolls and typography. And so stopping developers from working on one big letter and then stopping your business stakeholders from getting mad that you're not going to give them a big letter. That's how you make timelines like this work, right? You shed the unnecessary and focus on what's core.
But do you think this is specific to certain industries? Like you were giving example from media that we know that is trying to reinvent itself to the digital age and trying to find a monetization process. And like we might look at different kind of like traditional businesses that are moving. Do you think this is specific to this type of companies that are trying to reinvent themselves, or it applies to all software companies?
I think it applies to everyone. For a couple of reasons. Again, and I go back to what I ended with. Software in a repository has no value. This is why we don't do waterfall anymore. Why we don't do year-long projects. And again, I will caveat this. I don't work in regulated industries. And I don't work in regulated industries for a reason, just because, right? Like an airplane has to be perfect. An ATM has to be perfect. A bank has to be perfect. Again, I think some of this doesn't apply to them. They still do need to move fast, but they do need to be safe. But if you're sort of audience facing or consumer facing, the only thing that matters is software that people can use. And people have a larger appetite for things that are not everything they dreamed of, then you can possibly sort of understand. And I even like I'll even do this with IT. You know, when I was at the Telegraph, my first job there was actually to rebuild their IT group. So like desktop computers and printers and all of that really, really sexy stuff that we all love, right? But, you know, I got there and they had worked 2 years and had rolled out 200 of 1,400 new computers because they were trying to make everything perfect. And what I did with the IT group was try to break every deliverable down into a 2-month or 3-month deliverable so that the cycle times were fast, so that there was always progress. And that's like when people see progress, when people see things getting better, those time pressures start going away because you demonstrated ability, you've demonstrated excellence, and you have created more value than existed beforehand.
So basically, you're describing that a lot of companies don't have like a proper agile product building processes in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and let me be clear, if talking about design thinking wasn't inflammatory enough,
we'll get to that one as well. Yeah, but
I think ITIL is the single worst thing that has happened to computing and humanity since the mainframe. Right? I think ITIL is awful. And destroys all innovation and sort of all value. And this is the thing. And what businesses don't understand is that uptime is the enemy of progress and the enemy of innovation. Computers will do exactly what they do every day, all day, until you change them. And so the best way to make sure that nothing ever goes wrong is to never change anything. And this is the IT mindset. And this is, and even some places, this is a product mindset, right? Where I've worked with companies where the CEO had to sign off to any production push. And that's how you kill value, and that's how you kill innovation. And having a risk tolerance and, you know, knowing that your customers will forgive you, right? Netflix has been down before, right? There have been Netflix outages. Amazon has been down before. Everybody still uses Amazon and everybody still uses Netflix. Nobody has been like, Amazon was down for like 2 hours yesterday. I couldn't watch a video. I am never subscribing to them again. It doesn't happen. And so these like overly stuffy people who are risk adverse stop all progress. And you have to get that out for any compute project to be successful. It doesn't matter if it's IT, it doesn't matter if it's software, it doesn't matter if it's media.
We have a question from Radu. Do you think that delivery on time is more important than quality? And what is the sweet spot of choosing?
Yeah, that one's a tough one, and it's a bit of a balancing act. And I don't want to speak out of both sides of my mouth. Because I'm struggling with this in my current life, right? Where we're moving really, really fast, and I'm getting dinged on quality by my stakeholders, right? They're actually wishing we would have a little bit less software at a higher quality. And the way that I answer it is this: I think that the base level of you focus on speed to delivery until you have a base level of horizontal service. Right. And so by that, I mean, you move very, very quickly till you have all of the basic components that you need for a particular innovation or a particular new product. Once you have that base level of horizontal function, the spectrum shifts from speed to quality. Right. So now that you have customers, that people are starting to use the software, that you're developing an audience, that's when it working better becomes more and more important. So I think it starts with speed, and then when you get to a relative scale, it tips to quality.
And then the measurement of that would be what, like profitability for the business or other KPIs?
Yeah, right. And this is it's something that I did at 3Pillar, where we actually built out an engineering health index at the time, because too many people think about quality as escape defects or velocity, and it's neither of those. I honestly view quality as business outcome and customer engagement. Right? If your business is meeting its objectives and it's making money and it's hitting its KPIs and your customers are entertained, like frankly, it doesn't matter if that box that almost stopped my launch is 2 pixels off. Right? So it's 2 pixels off. It looks terrible, right? Like if you're critical and you're looking at their website, you're like, wow, that is 2 pixels off. Here's the thing. Nobody except somebody who works in software is going to see it. Your customer is going to say, oh, login, I want to log in, or they're reading the story, or they're watching the video. They're not criticizing your web app. That's like 4 people who have loud mouths that are going to email you no matter what. Most of your customers just care, can I get to my content? Can I watch my video? And that's what the focus needs to be.
All right. We have a question from Mihai. How were you able to create a team of 40 people, align and train them, and build a product in such a short period?
Yeah, that is a great question. And it was one of the hardest challenges about this entire thing. So I joined, Clifton Leaf, our editor-in-chief, is 18th of his lineage. I was first of my name. I was Fortune's first CTO. I'm in New York. I have limited budgets. And I had to hire sort of an entire team from scratch while sort of building all of this. So I did 2 things. I built a small internal team in New York, and I hired junior. I actually hired kids out of CodeCamp. So a significant number of those people had come straight out of CodeCamp. I promised them the hardest job they would ever get, with the most agency they will ever get in sort of a media company. And then I called my good friends at 3Pillar, a professional services provider, who I was their CTO. I built all of their development processes and structures, and they know how to work with me. And so the design goes like this. I'm going to hire very, very experienced engineers in Cluj, Timișoara, and Iași. Cluj is one of my favorite towns in the world, by the way. And what I really wanted to do was hire this new young team and supplement them with really experienced engineers so that my new team learned how to develop from professionals. So they understood good Agile, that they got into sort of cadences, and that a lot of the heavy engineering was done with that team, while I had a young sort of fun team working with the internal people at Fortune on sort of quality of life issues. And so it's really training a lot of my team by working with a really good provider. And then I look a year down the road, my New York team, like their velocity is off the charts. I mean, they are super fast, but they really focus on the front end and dealing with internal customer-centric builds, things that are advertising specific, so smaller, fast jobs. And then I work with a outsourced third party to do a lot of my heavy lifting that I've got a little more runway from.
And as a follow-up question to this, because this is probably the case for a lot of companies that are not intrinsically digital companies, but they're trying to become digital companies. What did you do in terms of culture? Did you try to create your own culture within the engineering team? Were you trying to integrate the 2 cultures? Were you trying to merge the engineers into the existing culture of the company, even though it's not a digital company?
Yeah, no. I operate like a startup. And it's one of the reasons that I was brought to Fortune. I mean, look, when you look at Fortune, like you don't think of a tattooed outlaw biker.
Good tattoos, by the way.
Yeah, for a CTO. I was brought in very, very much because I'm entrepreneurial and because I have a startup mindset, and that's how I built my team, right? And so I was going into New York, and I wear dress shirts to work and sometimes a coat, and I've got like 23-year-old developers, and I'd hired one of them. I'd hired them, and on my 90-day check-in with him, I asked him. He's super excited, over the moon, glowing, and I asked him, so tell me what's going wrong. And he goes, well, I'm embarrassed to tell you. And I'm like, tell me what you don't like about the job. And he's like, I don't like wearing a collared shirt. And I go, then wear a t-shirt. He's like, what? But we're Fortune. And I'm like, wear a t-shirt. I don't care. And that became it. I built a culture much like we would have at a startup, where what matters is creation, right? For me, and anyone who sort of knows me knows that I believe that the joy of building is the greatest thing on the planet, the art of creation. And I wanted an environment where my team felt good to create. And so I'm pretty free with working from home. We're all doing that right now, but beforehand, if somebody had to walk their dog or do something, like if you're committing code, I don't care if you're at home. Come into the office a couple of days, make sure I know you're alive. But making sure that it wasn't about butts and seats and regulations, and that creativity and creation and the joy of building was at the core. And I think, that's at the center of it. I didn't set out to integrate. I didn't want my team to fall into the old cycle, because when I got to Fortune, one of the things that got repeated is the most finely honed skill at Time Inc., Fortune's original parent company, was explaining why somebody else prevented you from doing your job. That's the culture I walked into, and that's not one that I'm willing to accept. Right? My team, we're responsible for creation. We're responsible for Fortune's success, and that means going out and innovating and pushing and working every day. And I think when you explain it to people like that, they respond. I give people great freedom and great agency, and then I just ask smart people to do smart things. And then I sort of open doors for them. And that's really how I've approached it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. The time is we're a bit over time, but all good. It was a great conversation. Thanks so much for your feedback. Thanks for for taking the time to answer the questions as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Look, again, if my particular brand of madness makes somebody 1% more successful, I will have been successful as a result. So thank you guys for having me. And anybody who ever has questions, feel free to find me on the internets. I'm happy to answer.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.